Hello pre-K families, welcome to my video presentation about phonological and phonemic awareness. Thank you for being interested in finding out how to support your child to become a confident reader and learner. This presentation will cover the following points. First, we will define phonological and phonemic awareness. Second part will cover how phonological and phonemic awareness is related to literacy development. Third part, we will give an overview how early reading development is related to early literacy skills. And finally, we will discuss examples of activities that can be used to teach the skills we discussed today. When it comes to phonemic and phonological awareness, it is important to understand what they are. Phonological awareness is the ability to identify sounds that are heard in spoken words. And this identification has 4 levels. It's sentence level, word level, syllable level, and phoneme level. Phonemic awareness, on the other hand, is one part of phonological awareness and is a foundational skills for the child in order to learn to read and spell. This skill helps the student match, blend, segment, and rearrange sounds in the words. Without the phonemic awareness, it is hard to connect the sounds of language to the letters and letter combinations. Phonological and phonemic awareness develop in categories. First category is words and rhyming that consists of word segmentation. In this stage, the student is able to recognize distinct words in a sentence and can, for example, count how many words are in the sentence. Secondly, recognition or rhyming, where the student is able to recognize common sounds in different words. For example, an sound in man, fan, pan. And third, production of rhymes, where the student is able to create rhyming words when asked. For example, when given a word hat, the student may say sat. Next category is mastery of syllables. And it comes first as a syllable recognition, where the student will recognize that the words are made up using group of sounds, for example, robot. Secondly, syllable deletion, where the student develops the skill to recognize the part of a word that is left after one syllable is removed. For example, jumping, and when we remove ing, it stays jump. Syllable substitution, where the student understands that the words can be made from parts. For example, play time, nap time. So it's like parts of it. Or for example, when we take this jumping, we remove ing and replace it with er. Jumping into jumper. Third category is the sound skills, where it's a sound recognition and phoneme recognition, when the student is able to recognize the individual sound on words. For example, dog has 3 sounds, d, d, o, g. Then sound imitation, where students can repeat the sounds that are modeled. Then sound isolation, noticing the same sound appearing in the beginning, middle, or end in different words. For example, d sound in the beginning of dog, in the middle of under, and as an ending sound in a word mad. After that comes sounds blending, and in this stage the child is able to recognize the word fan when given f, a, n sounds. Sound segmentation is opposite to blending, where the student can recognize the sound at in a word mat. And lastly, sound substitution helps the student to change the initial sound in a word in order to create a new word. For example, by changing l to f, the word changes from log to fog. Now going on to phonological and phonemic awareness and literary development. When the child first starts to imitate sounds, they follow the model of their caregivers. Language acquisition is directly related to imitating the sound that the infant hears produced by the people around him or her. Language develops in natural environment following the flow of the language rules, pronunciation and tone the child grows in. First picture books and environmental signs give a small child the first indications of print around them. And phonological and phonemic awareness are closely related to early reading development. Phonological awareness is like an umbrella that holds together the sound or phoneme part of the language, but is also connected to the phonics part, which means correspondence between the sound and the spelling pattern that represents the sound. Once the child understands how the sound works, she or he will start connecting them with a print concept, making connections of how the symbols or the sounds look like, which then how do the letters look like that match to the sound. Going on to early literacy skills. Next, we will discuss how the reading development is related to early literacy skills. Child spends more time with the parent than with the teacher, thus the parents can give the child a great head start when it comes to early literacy skills. Reading a book with a child as a daily ritual is a great way to establish the early reading habits and confidence in handling the books. However, reading is valuable when there is interaction that takes place during this process. Doing a picture walkthrough prior reading the book, having a discussion, what the book may be about, helps to set the positive tone to the reading time as well as give some background information what the book may be about. Having a discussion about the book after reading the story helps to develop communication and vocabulary skills. Now at the final part of the presentation, we will discuss the small group activities to teach literacy skills. When it comes to print concepts, then when a child enters the classroom, he or she is greeted with print-rich environment. She will see labels marking the cubbies, chairs with his or her name, marked play areas, daily schedule, vocabulary words that are related to the topic, and so on. It is essential to remember that print is not only in the classroom, but is all around, and there's no need for the parent really to start labeling everything at home to create the mini classroom version. For example, cereal boxes, street signs, traffic signs, store names, grocery store labels, and toy brands offer a variety of print. And the child will most likely recognize, for example, Lego label before he or she can actually read that it's a Lego. Furthermore, reading books to your child as a daily ritual is essential not only for introducing print concept, but also, like we said before, developing vocabulary, communication skills, and helping child to connect the sounds that he hears with a print. Letter naming is an essential part of helping child to remember the letter and sound match. We do not think about it often, but letters are like agreed symbols representing a sound that we produce. Thus, they are abstract and take time for a child to understand, recognize, link, and write. Letter naming and pointing repetition helps child to establish this connection and does not take a specific time for practice, that you don't really have to sit down and go, but it can be all around in your environmental print that you see. Neighborhood walks offer various ways for letter naming and practice. For example, bus route numbers with shiny electronic letters are fascinating to many children. Letters on community vehicles, picture labels in grocery stores give various opportunities to see and practice the letters. And yet again, reading time with your child gives the best opportunity to be exposed to repetition of letters and understanding that the letter combinations have meaning. They create the words create sentences, phrases, and then sentences. Vocabulary development grows hand in hand with child's opportunities to have a conversation with peers and adults. Though at first the child is rather a receiver than expressor, later on she or he learns to respond and take turns in talking. Vocabulary expands as the child learns the meaning of the words spoken to him or her and learns how to respond. Again, reading books is an excellent way to broaden the vocabulary, not only by reading the story, but also discussing the plot, describing pictures, and making guesses about how the characters feel in a story. As we read stories to the children that have some new vocabulary words, we stop, we repeat the word, explain the meaning, and repeat the word again with the children. This way, the we expose the new vocabulary, the exposure to the new vocabulary deepens, and the child is able to understand the new word by remembering the meaning of it with the words that he or she already knows. Phonological awareness is crucial in order to learn to read and manipulate the sounds. Learning to recognize syllables helps students to break the words apart and read them with greater ease. Learning to recognize the syllables can start with themselves. Finding out how many syllables does a child have in his or her name is motivating activity and has a rhythm in it that helps child to comprehend the activity. One of the activities that the student can do is to group themselves by the amount of syllable in their name. For example, all the kids who have 2 syllables in a name come in one group, all who have 3 are in another, and those who have 1 can be in a third group. For example, Laura and Arush, they would be in one group, and then Emily and Rofida can be in a different group with 3-syllable group. Clapping it out and finding the pair who has the same amount and syllables in the name is almost like a scavenger hunt in the classroom with the people. The other activity for phonological awareness is the last letter first game, where, for example, in the topic of animals, the child needs to listen to the last sound of the animal name and use this last sound as a beginning sound to name the next animal. For example, tiger, would be the last sound, and then the child can switch it into a first, then would, for example, rat. So then we hear the last as a T, so toad, the sound being the last, and the next animal can be, for example, a dinosaur, and the last sound R will represent again the new animal in the game. Listening and speaking skills can be developed by using open-ended questions when having conversations, using parallel and self-talk while modeling the activity, or having a playtime together, or even in a family cooking night where the parent can explain, this is what I'm doing. Look, I'm cutting the carrots. After that, I'm adding the onions, which is a self-talk. Or while the kid is helping you peel potatoes or do some small taking out the cucumbers. But I see you are taking out the cucumbers, and I see that you are counting potatoes. So that would be then the parallel talk of explaining the activity, what the child is doing. Asking who, when, why, what, where questions requires the child to use the vocabulary he or she has instead of answering yes or no questions. That, do you have that? Do you have the potatoes? Yes. Do you have the carrots? Yes. So instead it could be, tell me, what do you have? Oh, mommy, I have carrots over here. Comprehension skills are related to understanding of the text, conversations, or explanations. Asking questions about book that child and the adult read together is a great way to develop comprehension with supporting visuals. Picture walkthrough prior reading a book, like we mentioned earlier, is a great way to give a head start for the ideas that the story may be about and may help a child to understand the text better. Now, we also have to think about modifications. While choosing the activities for the child to support the development of phonological and phonemic awareness, together with print concept and comprehension, it is important to apply modifications when needed. For example, a child with autism or ADHD needs a book that has clutter-free visuals, while the child with visual impairment also needs high contrast. And the child with hearing impairment, but also with the ADHD or adult dyslexia, may need a quiet environment without distracting auditory information to be able to focus on the voice or the sound of the reader. And again, with the child with dyslexia, for example, they need a book with clear print and with a constant print where the print doesn't change from italic to bold or change the different text sizes or separated letters. So those are hard for dyslexic kids to understand and comprehend. So this was the overview about phonological and phonemic awareness. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you learned something new today and found an activity that will be fitting for your child. Take care, have a good evening.